Todd says he's going to flip me on, or
You're flipped on. I won't flip you off yet. That'll come later.
we were you Navy guys, I'm telling you, it's a tough house. Okay. All right, so we are approaching the end of September. There's a flash news alert, but you probably already knew that. So I was just going to start off by saying I get different feedback on these things from different people, and by these things I mean this Bible study in between the two worship services. And one is, hey, this is really good because it's kind of floating and we can cover whatever bases there are to cover. That's fine. And others, we kind of would like a Bible study of a Bible theme or a Bible book or a Bible something or other. And the answer is, I'm a temp, right? So it's kind of, if I was the resident pastor, I'd say, this is what we're going to do, and that's what we're going to do. And you'd say, oh, great, thank you. Anyway, but I'm trying to be flexible. And if there's something that you would rather do that has more structure to it, all you have to do is say, hey, let's do something like a 5-year study of the book of Leviticus or something exciting. See, that would, anyway, if there's a specific doctrine, a specific idea, a book of the Bible, how-to that is specific to the structure, the nature, the function of the church, as opposed to a general topic. We don't have to play whack-a-mole kind of stuff. Just give some thought to that and let me know. I'm at your service. But remember Psalm 153, thou shalt not push thy luck. Never mind. I just made that up. We built a little aside. We finished a building project, a new church once, and people right away, and it had a very nice kitchen, and people thought it was nice and loved using the kitchen, except everybody was so busy enjoying the kitchen that they wouldn't put anything away. So there were always dirty dishes laying around. So they had this kind of a odd pastor, I guess. Anyway, so I went in on the computer and I printed up, thou shalt not leave before thou hast thy dirty dishes washed. Psalm 157, verse 3. Put it up in a plastic sleeve, stuck it up on a kitchen cupboard, problem solved. It was kind of funny, but it was kind of like, hey, really?
Wasn't that on the alternate tablet stuff?
It could have been on that ancient Egyptian text that was kind of discovered later.
Commandments 1 and 2.
Yep. Some of this stuff I just make up. When it's true, I'll let you know. But anyway, no, it should be the other way around. All right. Where would you like to begin? What would you like to talk about? Your shot to call. Yes, sir.
Wondering how confirmation is going and how many students we ended up.
The question is, how's confirmation going, and the number of students and that kind of stuff.
Just a quick,
I'll,
it have to be a full hour.
Okay, I didn't take it as that, not a full hour. Here's the confirmation in a nutshell type of thing. So we have, I think, 6 who are in the 7th and 8th grade, 4 who are in the 6th grade, and 1 special needs student who is in 6th grade, and that student has his own curriculum, which he follows on a schedule that's been laid out for his parents, and the curriculum that was identified for him/them was offered to them and developed in conjunction with them, and by them I mean the parents. And that is, for him, that is fits into the same window, a 2-year plan like the other confirmands. And when he completes it, it's done. And the final scenario on that is a document signed by all parties, and that's the way that it is. So if somebody doesn't like it, once it's signed, that's the way it is. If you don't like it, that's the way that it is. Because what was put together is distinct to match up for the boy. Not everybody may want that plan. Not everybody may like that plan. The short answer is, don't know, don't care. It was a plan I put together in conjunction with the parents. They agreed to it, and that was good enough for me. That's the way it goes. Anyway, for the rest of the kids, the 6th graders have a 1-year plan in 6th grade using 2 CPH books, 100 Bible stories, and that's how many chapters there are, 100. They already have their books, and they also have a workbook that goes along with it, a lesson and a worksheet. The worksheet and reading timetable that was set out was if you're doing 3 a week, you'll be done by the end of April. And so the work schedule set out for the 7th and 8th graders is a doctrine class and goes through the Luther's small catechism. If everybody does it at the pace that I set out, that means they will be done, and confirmation would be the last Sunday in April. And as soon as I sent that letter out, I still have some juice. I heard that the official confirmation day here is the first weekend in May. Didn't know that? Don't care. I'm much more concerned that the kids get the doctrine right and the education happens than on a magic date. And now this is me. I'm also saying, I really don't anticipate being here then. You got a call committee, right? Yeah. What's the function of the call committee? Lead the congregation, present information to the congregation to pick Pastor Billy Joe from Muskrat Flats, Oklahoma, and he's going to come here and going to be your pastor. I'm expecting to be what's technically called in theological terms out of here. But what I've also put together, in the process still of putting together in details, is that whatever I put in place, this isn't a, hey, as long as it works out for me, I'm happy plan. Because who cares what I think? My wife doesn't even care what I think sometimes. But anyway, everything is designed to be an easy handoff from me to whoever the ordained guy is who comes in. So there is nothing in it that's peculiar. 100 Bible stories using materials from CPH. I'm betting he can handle it. Luther's Small Catechism. If he can't handle that, we'll have other problems. But anyway, the only structure in there is the schedule, and the point was brought up. Well, what if I should back up half a step. It was mutually agreed among the parents that because we have 2 different curriculum, that the 6th graders would meet on one Wednesday, the 7th and 8th graders meet on another alternate Wednesdays. So it alternates back and forth, 6th graders 1 week, 7th and 8th graders the next week, then 6th graders, 7th and 8th graders, and the whole schedule is designed that way so that the schedule for one class and the other, like 2 gears, they just come together. The concern was, well, there's half the time the kids are at home, and the answer is, don't see that as a problem. Well, what if they don't do that work? Not my problem. If the kids don't do the work, not my problem. If the parents at home with the kids don't help the kids through the lessons, not my problem. I'm not responsible for how parents raise their kids. Parents are responsible. You want to make sure your kid's confirmed on that date? Better spend some time with it. You don't do it, not my problem. If you want to meet that projected schedule, do that projected pace. If you don't, we have confirmation in the middle of September. The big issue is not that kids are confirmed on a certain date, at least not to me. My concern is that they have knowledge and grow in their faith. That takes cultivation, and newsflash, I'm not the parent of any of the kids. This is a parent, pastor, kid combo platter. It takes all three tires to have air in it for it to work. I'll try to do my part, and as long as I get enough coffee and feel like it, I will. But the parents and kids have to do their part. But I'm just not a hand out certificates to somebody who showed up and didn't do any of the work. Not that, I just don't do that. Otherwise, giving confirmation certificates to kids who have really tried. I'd rather give a confirmation certificate to a kid who really tried and didn't get it all right than to a kid who's sloughing and bumming. That's just me. Also not a popular answer. The answer is don't care. Not here to win votes. The assignment, the educational assignment is to bring up these children in the understanding and faith that is consistent with what we believe, teach, and confess. That's pretty simple, but if the objective is to got to have a confirmation certificate so you can show to grandma, that's great, that's a family issue, but that doesn't determine what I do or don't do. I may do more, but I'm just not a big fan of rewarding poor behavior. That's just me. Yes, ma'am.
This is going a step before confirmation. I'd like to hear how you would talk with a parent who's got burned out on church many years ago, and so they have a child, and the child is not baptized, and
Yep. So for parents, for people who will be listening, to repeat the question, how to talk to parents whose kids don't want to come, and maybe even the parents don't want to come, kids not baptized, burned out, don't care. This is, you ask me, you get my opinion. If you ask another ordained guy, he'll probably give you a completely different answer. Fortunately for you, I'm correct. But anyway, it's a tricky kind of a thing. In our lifetimes, that wasn't even a question that was asked, because it wasn't that long ago, at least for us who grew up right alongside of buffalo herds, that going to church on Sunday was a way of life. And now there are lots of other things that are going on. Other compounding factors are we just finished 20 years of war. Afghanistan, Iraq, after 9/11, and that we were directly involved with a war for 20 years, and now we're indirectly involved in another war, although we're not sending any people there yet. So we had no direct or indirect involvement in a war for 7 months. Now it's going on again. I mention that because that's a stressor on people. Whether or not you've got somebody directly there or not, when the news is war, 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 and war for 20 years, that's a whole generation, and the only thing they know growing up is the conversation about war. That takes us, we haven't had something like that in America until we go back to Vietnam, which started in the early 60s and didn't end till the middle 70s. So I'm just going to throw out there 14, 15 years. Compounded on 20 years of war, you've got, this pandemic thing, where in a congregational setting, congregations either ceased to function or had to come up with seriously modified ways of functioning and bumped the needle out of the groove. And so we're still trying to figure out how to get back into the groove. And by the way, what's the groove? You can spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror and say, I want it the way that it was back in 2015 or something, but I wasn't here then and don't know. And by the way, it's not 2015 anymore. So we're doing a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of salvage, a lot of restoration, and in some places even recovery. Early on, not here, but in another, in a mission station, a couple came and said came to me and wanted to get married in the church. And I said, oh, what's your church background? And we kind of fiddled around in that, and it was pretty thin. But most of the people in this town had extensive church backgrounds like these people, or like these people claimed. And he said, well, what kind of stuff do you believe in this church? And I said, well, you know, for instance, we kind of go with the 10 Commandments. And he said, the 10 what? So you see what I'm saying? There's a different starting point. There just is a different starting point now. We talk about Luther's Small Catechism, and we talk about it like it's the owner's manual. Other people are saying, manual for what? So talking about getting people back into the groove, we're talking about Introduction to the Faith 101. Even if the families have been in the church for as long as they can remember, just because that was where the parents were and how they were involved, has in some cases now seemingly absolutely nothing to do with where the kids are. And so it is in this restoration, revitalization, putting new life back into that which has lost some of its momentum. Todd just walked out, but we could be talking Navy. Well, I was going to use it because he was Navy, but in a sailing ship, when you're out in open water and the wind stops, that's called the doldrums in terms of weather. The doldrums can also set in terms of a church. If you don't have wind in your sails, you're just sitting there. And you can sit there, but after a while, you're not going anywhere. And if you're out in the ocean, the mission of a ship is to go somewhere and do something. The other option is doldrums don't matter, but then you have to have the ship tied up to the dock. And then you're not going anywhere either. If you just go whither and wherever, you can cruise the world that way. If that's your mission, that's fine. But without some attention, you're going to end up on the rocks. And Scripture is replete with images of that kind of a thing, shallow rocks and going on the rocks and whiskey on the rocks. Nope, the last one I made up. But anyway, it's a delicate procedure because you can't have the conversation with the same assumptions that were there before, because most of that pre-existing stuff isn't in people's spiritual mental files. It's a lot more of along the lines of first let them know that you care. The old mission adage, people won't care what you believe until they believe that you care. The question is now, how do you let people know that you care? And that's pretty subjective. The answer is, in my book, first you have to identify what the needs are. The stock answer is, we need to get people to want to come to church. Well, what if their coming to church isn't, that's great for us, but what if that's not number one on their hit parade list? I'm just saying, what if their number one thing on the hit parade list is, for parents, is somehow providing for their kids? What are the needs their kids have? Don't know. So there's a lot more. In homiletics, in preaching, it has to do with the exposition and the explaining of the text. Get what's in there, get it out. Make it plain, explain. The X is out, the plain is plain. Make it plain, get it out. And so from my perspective, it's a matter of how do we do a little digging and find out what's going on so that it's plain to us what the needs are. Once we get that out, then we can meet the needs. And sometimes the needs are primarily spiritual. Sometimes the needs are physical. Sometimes needs are ecclesiastical. And these aren't like separate circles. They could be like the Olympic rings that are interconnected. That's even better, but it takes more hands on deck to be able to get these things done. In short, trickier than before. I don't know how it was done, how it's been done here. But here's another example of how things have changed. Previous pastors here, did they make home visits? They did? How?
When we first started, that's why we chose this church. The pastor came up and said, I don't know you, I'm coming to your house.
He snuck over the back fence and was pounding on the back door. I'm not leaving until you answer the door. See? And it worked.
And it worked.
It worked. How many of you here have had a pastor visit you in your house in the last 5 years? 1, 2, 3. Okay. The vast majority have not. The old adage, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and were at the seminary, the old adage was, a home-going pastor makes for church-going people. But why do you think that doesn't happen as much anymore? You are the evidence because it's not happening. Why is it not happening? What changed? Go ahead again.
Communication.
Communication is one. You were thinking, you looked like you were thinking.
Yeah, there's two things, that come to my mind. One is the sheep fault, and the other, I believe some of our pastors have become lazy and sitting in their office too long.
You,
They don't have to prepare way too long for certain guidelines that
yeah,
another family gets left by the wayside.
right.
So in those two reasons, yes, the sheep, we are the sheep, and we need to work and care for one another and pray for one another. However, pastors sit in their office too long.
So the answer is for those on mic, sheep, I was told to do this. So for people listening in or later, it's a question of then what's going on. Sheep at home not looking after one another, and pastors who have become office potatoes, my words, who sit in their offices. And there's truth to both. Yes, sir. I'm agreeing with you.
We've had quite a few new pastors here, and every time I have asked them, I said their number one priority as far as I'm concerned would be to lead each family in their home. That's where I thought they should start.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when, like Neil said, when you make that personal connection, that helps. And we've had pastors that have done that. It's just like a dramatic difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been rebuffed on that. They just say, well, I couldn't possibly do that.
And so he, for the recording, was saying his preference was that that pastors make these visits to people, and when he said that, he's been rebuffed, and so you were rebuffed, and how did the rebuff strike you?
I don't know, there was an indifference to it.
Okay. There are, from the ordained guy category, the things that are going on is, in my last full-time parish, this is literally what I had to do. Before I would go to visit people, anybody, I made sure that 2 different sources of information were contacted to know that I was going to Billy Bob and Susie Q's house. My wife was usually one, but sometimes she was teaching. But anyway, so 2 different sources had to know. That was standard operating procedure. And if you don't like it, I don't care. Why did I adopt that policy? My personal practice, not policy. Why did I do that? To protect me. The answer is, can you spell lawsuit? Because if I show up to visit somebody at this house with this guy and his wife and his 2 little kids, and he's not home from work yet, and his wife is there, or his sister-in-law, or somebody else is there, or the kids are there, but you know what? The sister-in-law is really ticked off because she didn't win the lottery. You know what I am? I'm a walking lottery ticket. Because you know what happens when she calls the police and says, hey, this pastor from this church, I don't really know who he is, but I saw her go into this house and this and that I think happened. You know what just happened? A police report was filed, and the pastor's name is on it. And all of a sudden, he is what's technically called dead meat on a stick. How do you, now I'm just saying socially, how do you undo that? Let's just say he let everybody know, and everything that happened at the house was just right according to what everybody hoped for and wanted. But once that phone call is made and the authorities are contacted, they have no other option than to file a report. And what's that do to the not only to the pastor, what's that do to the congregation? I'm sure it's never happened in this fine congregation, but there is speculation that in some congregations the word gets out, pss, 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 pss. Did you hear that the pastor is under investigation by the local police? All right, now who wants to go to that church? This is a new wrinkle. This didn't used to be something that people had to take, that ordained guys had to take into consideration. How do you adjust to it? Well, I made 2 contacts so that nobody could say I was off sneaking around or doing something. No, because I said, you can ask this person and you can ask that person. It is a whole different game. I had a confirmand, even, this is not going to home visits, but even at the church. Anybody have a kid in confirmation class? You saw that form I had parents fill out, and the last line on there was, is your kid taking any medication? Now, you know what? How many times in the course of umpteen years of doing this have I ever thought of asking if your kids are on medication or not? And why would I do that now? Because once I had a kid in confirmation, the kid wasn't even a member. Parents brought him because they didn't want to go to the other church. I don't care. They brought the kid over, but you know what? He decided that he didn't want to take his meds that day. And so because he didn't take his meds, he went off on, of all people, he went after his mother. And so I'm the guy standing there, and guess what I did? I grabbed the kid, wrapped him around, and I pinned him up against the wall, and I did it with firmness. Fortunately, and so the kid, then he defused and all this, and it was his mother. Fortunately for me, one of the elders of a congregation was a sheriff and was standing right there. But when somebody else in the congregation heard, did you hear that the pastor assaulted a kid right after confirmation? How long do you think it was before I heard from the police? And this came from somebody who wasn't even there. But we didn't, the police wouldn't say, well, who filed the report? They said, well, we can't tell you that. And I thought, okay. So I went with the sheriff out to the home of the parents, and we said, we hope there was no harm done, but why did you guys call the police? And they said, what are you talking about? They weren't upset in the least. The kid was happy because now he was back on his meds. The parents didn't even know anything was wrong. But somebody in their great wisdom decided, well, this is something, we need to protect our church. And so that investigation lasted for 2 years. And finally, from the ordained guy's side, you want visits? Hey, great. When you have this kind of stuff happening in a confirmation class, and who else is there to corroborate that here, by the way? Another adult who's here. Who is that? Oh yeah, right, nobody. So if a kid goes home and says, the pastor punched me in the face, what evidence do I have contrariwise? The answer is none. But when this happens in the context of other people, this has serious consequences, and people are of a different mind these days, and so that was something that happened. And when after 2 years I called the police and I said, isn't this kind of enough of this? And they said, well, we kind of stopped that like a year ago. And I said, well, nobody informed me. And they said, well, we're just kind of done. And I said, au contraire, you're not done. I don't know who I'm talking to at the police, but I said, you're not done. You sent me a letter that said this and this happened. And I want a written report that says this is what your investigation said, and I want it on your letterhead. And I want it now, because this is like Lazarus on the fourth day. It stinks. And then they did. I'm just saying. So there are ramifications and implications to routine stuff, because people, in many respects, are a little bit out of control. Whereas, and I'm saying socially, the drift and the trend is everybody gets to do what they want for whatever reason that they want, and can chalk it off as I'm justified because. And it doesn't have to be directly connected. Found out later, it was a woman who had called the police. It was my secretary. Because I was talking to the kid's pastor on the phone and she was listening in. But she decided she needed to do her patriotic duty. And I said, well, why? Well, because this is part I'm not making up. I'm just saying, this is what, I don't know if all ordained guys have to deal with. This is what I've had to deal with. Well, her husband's in the Army. And he's a recruiter here in town. I said, and he's having an affair with somebody else. And the husband's proposal is that this other woman and his wife, my secretary, should live together in a threesome. And I'm not done yet. This is the good part, or the good part's yet to come. And because it's such a tense situation, then here a couple of days ago, he ran his truck into a telephone pole, and now he's in the hospital, and I don't know what to do, and I'm really frustrated. And so you make up something and call the police. Yeah, well, she felt better. Good, thank you very much. I didn't make any of that up. But the thing with the confirmand had nothing to do. That was her personal life. But because her personal life was all in a turmoil, well, let's see, I need to do something. I'll call the police on somebody else. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. Wait a minute, I gotta have a drink. I hope something's in this coffee. And so what that did was it altered the way that I ministered to people in the congregation, because I'm thinking, good grief. A has absolutely nothing to do with B, but it ends up on my lap. How do I adjust, navigate that? So the pastoral care still happens. The connections still happen. Because as a rule of thumb, don't let jackasses and idiots run your life. I learned that from the Army. That's my slogan, but anyway. The people, just because they want to do something, they can be really nice people, but they don't necessarily know how does this affect other effects in things. So the woman who calls the police, she thinks she's doing her great civic duty and protecting the church. How do you think that affected my wife? You got what happened? I said, well, here's the letter. Well, I don't know that I ever told our kids. I'm just saying, this is, you drop those rocks in the water and the ripples the hits just keep coming. And you can, on the human side, here's how this works. Let me back up. This is how it works ecclesiastically. The pastor gets notified by the police that they're filling out a report. Guess what's the first thing a pastor has to do? Now you have to think, ordained guy, Missouri Synod. What's the first thing I did? Pray. you pray, after you wake up from being hit in the head, you can pray, you can start praying later. First thing that you have to do as a corporate member of the Synod, there are two categories of members in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. What are they? Congregations. You individually are not really a member of the Missouri Synod. The congregation is a member. Two categories of members: congregations, ordained guys. So the first thing I did was pick up the phone and had to call the district president, say, hey, ordained president guy, here's a call you can't wait to have. Another pastor in the district is being investigated by the police. His dream has come true too. So you see, the ripple effects of this are out there. So somewhere in whoever keeps my file, or probably the district president, don't know. There's a file with me that somebody called the police on this, and that eventually it was cleared. But you know, it was if I'd have ever told that to my mother, probably would have killed her. She already had a bad heart. I'm just saying, people don't stop and think about this, and to a certain extent, don't give a rip. Because if they were concerned about other people, they would be trying to take this stuff into account. But the focus has changed socially. It's about me, 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 and me. And so what that has inevitably done is then change the way, at least I can't talk about everybody else, but that changes the way that you do ministry, that changes the way you approach people, it changes the way you think, because you start thinking, well, if I do this or don't do that, how long will it take before? And the answer is not if something's going to happen, but when. And so now I'm going to let you in on a little inside secret of how I do what I do as a vacancy pastor. Well, I did this in the parish anyway. So a big chunk of my time has been spent doing hospital stuff and nursing home stuff, and we were always doing assessments. How do you tell where somebody is spiritually? Remember we were talking at one point about vital signs? And so I'm just telling you, I do that here all the time. I send out probes. I'm looking to see what's your temperature, what's your pulse, what's your blood pressure. Are you kind of calm and relaxed or heat up? So I'm doing these same kind of assessments that we would do for a guy laying in a bed is the same kind of thing I do for a congregation or to a congregation. So when, I won't necessarily tell you what they all are. What I'm looking to see is, how do people respond to this kind of stuff? Because as a congregation, you've just gone through 20 years of war and a pandemic, and earlier in the year, one pastor left, and a few months later, the other pastor left. How's that shake your jello? That's not in, and you can say, well, that's just stuff that happens. Yeah, it is, but all of that stuff has a psychological impact, an ecclesiastical impact. They affect people emotionally. It affects the way that people in the church respond or don't respond. And what I'm looking is to figure out what's going on and where. I was talking to somebody this morning. We were talking about compression in engines. You want to have one cylinder's up and one cylinder's down. And that, well, shouldn't they all be up at the same time? No. You need some ups and you need some downs, but you need compression the same in all cylinders. And it's really important if you're running a Poppin' Johnny. Then we had to stop, and who knows what a Poppin' Johnny is? Okay, there we go. Now we're speaking English. A Poppin' Johnny, for those who don't know, is a 2-cylinder John Deere tractor, which you can hear 5 miles away. And there's a reason why they never turned those engines into things that are attached to aircraft wings. But they make a distinct sound when they're running. They're really reliable tractors, but there's not really all that much to them. That's my analysis. But anyway, so what I'm looking for is compression in cylinders. I'm doing a lot of rubber hammers to knees because I'm looking at reactions, because the purpose of an interim fill-in pastor guy in my view, is not just to keep winding up the toy so it runs around and does what it does. It's a lot easier, but one of the functions of a vacancy interim pastor guy is, what do you think it is, by the way? I'm supposed to be here because, come on, to drink your coffee and eat the pie. That's true. What is a vacancy pastor supposed to do? Yes, sir.
He's supposed to prepare the congregation for the new service.
Prepare the congregation for the resident incoming guy? No, let's just sit on the taxiway and burn fuel and never go anywhere. The answer, that's completely correct. My job isn't to, the next guy coming in, his job is to make you happy all the time. No, not really. This is a preparation thing. Big things, small things. I look at things and I said, how come? The purpose is, you know I'm not a member here, right? You went from 2 full-time guys who live here to 1 full-time guy who lives here to a part-time guy who lives out of town. And guess what everybody wants? Everything done just like it was before. And the answer is, ain't gonna happen. The Lutheran question is, well, what does that mean? Well, then let's try to figure that out. But it ain't gonna happen. And so I do things that some people just don't like. The answer is, that's fine, but I really don't care. I'm not here to make that board happy, this person happy. I'm here to figure out what does the congregation need? Maybe this person, this family, in conjunction with a funeral, how to get confirmation up and running. How do you have there's a good example. Why is confirmation alternating like a poppin' Johnny between 6th grade on one hand and 7th and 8th grade on the other? Did I mention, there's only one guy here working part-time, right? Okay. So the parameters that were set out, we want 3 years of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, 3 years of kids, and we want it all done in time just like whatever. And I said, okay, it is, but you know what? My omnipresent skills stink. I have a hard time being in one place at one time, much less getting everything done. But pretty much to this point, all of the big stuff that people want done, all of it is being done by the part-time guy from out of town. But the happy factor is up and down depending upon my answer to this, that, or the other thing. And the answer is, why do you think I did that? I'm looking to see. When the next guy comes in, he says, well, who do I need to look out for? This is what ordained guys do. At some point, somebody's going to, whoever the pastor is, who is he going to talk to? He doesn't know you guys, and he doesn't know me. So what he's going to do is his own probe. He's looking to figure out what's going on in Trinity. And the package of information is always we put our best foot forward kind of stuff. Why? Because you want Pastor Bob from Muskrat Flats, Oklahoma to come. Otherwise, you wouldn't have sent him the call. Yes, sir.
Your job is to continue to be our shepherd. We need a shepherd. Regardless of how you do it, or what you do, or how you view things, you are our shepherd. And you interpret scripture for us to live every day.
So the point is the vacancy pastor is the shepherd. So you're correct. And so this is the way that it works from my perspective. You can save yourself 25 cents and you can call the district office and probably get a different dictionary answer because they have a different dictionary. This is the way that it works for me. I'm the vacancy pastor. Vacancy is what? That's an adjective that describes the role. You can have full-time pastor, head pastor, junior pastor, left-hand pastor, resident pastor, vacancy pastor, interim pastor, but the bottom line, all of that other stuff explains one position, pastor. And officialdom doesn't really like that, but my point is in this, and I kind of hear this a lot, well, you're just the vacancy pastor. with the underscore in italics and the quotes on vacancy? And the answer is, you are exactly right. I'm the vacancy pastor. So remember, when I pronounce the absolution and say your sins are forgiven, they don't apply to you, because I'm just a vacancy guy. I'm getting kind of snarky there in the tone with the intent that if you don't think a vacancy pastor does the shepherd stuff, then stay home. But you have one pastor here right now. Sad to say, it's me. All the good guys were busy. But just the right guy will get a call and he'll be here next week. We're having a congregation ordained guy. This is how it works. We could use all kinds of ecclesiastical fancy dancy language, but in my world, this is how it works. And what I'm trying to do is not only do the shepherding stuff, but I'm also trying to do these analytical critiques so that when a guy shows up, stuff that was maybe out of place is maybe put back into a different place. That's not to say the ordained guys who are here were wrong and going to hell. I'm just saying, every time you get an ordained guy, and all these ordained guys, me included, come out of 2 seminaries. And to give you an idea of the future, what's the first year class enrollment at the seminary in St. Louis right now? Number of students, first year class. How many? 35. If there are 35 at the other seminary, that would mean in 4 years, number of graduates to fill in the hundreds of vacancies, 70. You don't like the answer? I'm just giving you the data. Because one of my things is I'm giving you data. I say this is the response I get. I don't do that, this is the response I get. Like it or not like it, what I'm doing is the same thing I would do in chaplaincy, but I'm doing it for a corporate entity. I do it for individuals, I do it for groups, I do it for committees, I do it for the congregation, so that if a problem can be identified, here's the way it works in healthcare. I think I've said this before, you're looking at a problem, but the problem is indicated by the symptoms. I'm looking for symptoms to identify the problem so that we can treat the problem. If you spend all your time treating the symptoms, all of the problems just stay there and remain latent, and then what happens is they raise their hoary head later, like the proverbial sliver under your skin. I had this sliver under my skin once, and it was about an inch and a quarter long. I didn't put it there on purpose, but it was kind of irritating because it was on my hand. Oh, here it is, the marker, it's on this hand. So it went in this way, and I thought, well, what do you do? And so I cut my finger and I shoved it through the rest of the way, and I thought, well, that wasn't fun. But I couldn't, because it was in and it was pretty long. But then I got my knife and I broke the sliver in half by cutting in the middle of it. That wasn't fun either. Then I pulled one end of the sliver out one way, and I pulled the other sliver out the other way, and then I had a really bloody hand for a while. But if I don't take the sliver out, and don't say go to a doctor. I mean, doctors, I got a pocket knife, I'm good. Pocket knife and a pair of pliers and a crescent wrench, you can pretty much solve most of the problems in the world. But anyway, if you don't take the sliver out, all you're going to get is an infection. And then the infection will take over, and the small thing becomes the big thing. But in the missiology of the church, in the function of the congregation, the main thing is to keep the main thing as the main thing. And if a congregation doesn't know the main thing, then it's going to be busy doing what's technically called something else that's not the main thing. Then you have to reset to the main thing. So if you can keep the main thing as the main thing and focus on doing the main thing, all the other stuff is other stuff. And when the other stuff stays other stuff, then the main things get taken care of. Then you're dealing with the important stuff, not just stuff. You know how much just stuff there is? A lot of it. That's one of the reasons I don't go to pastors' conferences. Well, A, I'm retired and they can't make me. And B, they spend a lot of time dealing with other stuff. I get it. You have to deal with other stuff, but the answer is not interested as much in the other stuff. I'm interested in getting the other stuff out of the way so that we can focus on the stuff. The main stuff. And that's not just a rolling along. It would be a lot easier in a vacancy to just say, you know what, just going to roll with it. But how does that help you, if it could be changed, adjusted, improved? How does that help the next guy coming in? If he comes in and sees it, well, this is all dented, dinged up, scratched, well, then he's going to have to spend time and energy focusing on getting that done. If it's done before he shows up, then he can work on something else. Like taking care of people, as if that was important. There is in the mission and ministry of the church, although it is morphing into that more and more, I'm agreeing with you, this business of sitting behind a desk all the time, that follows a business model. I got it. Go sit behind your desk. I get it. It's cold out there. And people outside in their homes, some people are nice, but some people not so nice. Who wants to go visit not nice people? Not me. I can sit in my office and work on computer stuff. Ministry is about service. Get off your ecclesiastical pastoral butt and go visit people. Because that's the needs are out there.